How's it going, guys? So the Packers were pretty much an extreme disappointment this year, going 8-9, and that's after coming into this year where we were fully expecting maybe another 13-win season because we're so spoiled with them and just got used to them. But with a top-level defense on paper and a running duo that was supposed to just pretty much pound the ground, none of this came to fruition. Now, I didn't expect us to not miss the playoffs. I definitely didn't expect us to go below 500, but figured since we're now in the offseason and we're not in the playoffs, we should look position by position and see what potentially happened and how each position actually performed throughout this year. And in this video, we're going to strictly look at the quarterback position and pretty much Aaron Rodgers. We're not going to look at Jordan Love. Pretty much Aaron Rodgers. So coming into the season, we fully expected Aaron Rodgers to not carry this team anymore. We expected him to take a few steps back, especially with a very young receiving crew, losing Davante Adams. We expected him to play kind of a game management role at the most. And that was all right because we fully accepted that, hey, the receiving crew is not there. We have a great rushing attack and an elite defense. So we shouldn't have to depend on Aaron Rodgers. And we wanted to get away from that. We got tired of seeing, yes, Aaron Rodgers bailing us out year after year, but having no help. So let's try a different round. And of course, that didn't happen. Aaron Rodgers had statistically probably one of his worst seasons in the NFL since starting in 2008 after he took over for Brett Favre. And it just seemed like he wasn't on the same page with his receivers. He had a bit of injuries, and he just didn't always seem on target. And looking at his statistics for this year, he had a 64.6% completion percentage, down from 68.9% last year, and it was actually one of his lowest. He ended up throwing for 3,695 yards, down from 4,115, had 26 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, although last year he had 37 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Granted, last year and his last 2 years were his MVP, and he just played amazing. Had a 6.8 yards per attempt, down from last year at 7.7 yards per attempt, and had a 91.1 QB rating, which is the lowest of his career. And that was also down from last year, from which he had a 111.9 QB rating. So all his statistics were down this year, except for interceptions that went up. In looking at this just on a statistical standpoint, he definitely did not live up to last year or even touch last year. And we didn't expect that, like I said, especially with the receiving crew pretty much being completely new. And our number one receiver being Allen Lazard, which most of us were still confused of how is Allen Lazard going to be as the number one receiver. We don't really like that. And as we pretty much figured, it did not work out. He's not a number one receiver. So Aaron Rodgers had no real number one receiver till like week 9, where Christian Watson was just going off. But then we can delve a little bit deeper into this. So he had 40 total drops this season. 24 of them were by his wide receivers. And that pretty much looks about right. From when you're watching the games, you saw a lot of drops, especially on key plays. If it was like 3rd and 3 and a receiver or the running back just drops the ball, which could have been an easy first down, moving the chains. We pretty much shot ourselves in the foot a lot of times in that scenario. But then when you start trying to compare Aaron Rodgers to the rest of the league, it doesn't look all too bad. It doesn't look as bad as it seemed to us Packer fans, to where he looked like a below average quarterback. And comparing him with the rest of the league, he was 11th this season in passing yards, so above average if you do 16 as the average, and just missed the top 10. He was 7th in touchdowns, but he also was 9th in interceptions. So his interceptions bad, but his touchdowns were still good for 7th. So he's in the top 10. And his completion percentage was 20th best in the league. So when looking at this, you actually see that he wasn't as terrible as we may have thought, especially watching these games and pretty much being diehard Packer fans. Like, we're so used to Aaron Rodgers being maybe not vintage Aaron Rodgers, but at least Aaron Rodgers from the past 2 years. Like, we saw amazing QB play, and he pretty much looked unstoppable. And that was paired with Davante Adams. We figured we'd take a few steps back. We took a ton of steps back when losing Devontae Adams. There was no type of chemistry. There's a lot of drama, and like, is Aaron Rodgers hating running the ball? Does he hate his receivers and all this other junk? Does he hate Matt LaFleur's play calling? There's a lot of drama that could have played a part, because even though you're allegedly not listening to it, it's there. But then to also add on top of it, at the end of the Giants game, he sustained a pretty bad thumb injury that I still don't know how he played every game after sustaining that thumb injury, which would have knocked a lot of players out for at least a few weeks. He kept playing with it, and it obviously affected him. His throws were off. He didn't have the entire arm strength, and it's like, why does a thumb affect your arm strength? Well, the grip on the ball. If it slips out a little sooner than you expect it, it's not going to go as deep as you expect it. So it definitely affected him. And you could tell they were also trying to figure out how he could play with this injury, because they kept trying different bandage techniques. Like, it seemed like every week had a different type of splint or like tape. I don't know the science behind it, but he had a different type of tape and how they taped him up every week, trying to figure out how best he could play with this injury. And then in Philadelphia, where he got knocked out in the second half of the game with the rib injury, as they called it, a chest rib bruise, but it apparently knocked him out to where he was a little bit afraid if he had a punctured lung. That knocked him out. So he had a difficult season. He was definitely under pressure a lot more this year. It felt like, especially with our line slightly coming back after injury from last year and the constant flip-flopping of who's playing left tackle, who's playing right tackle, who's playing left guard, who's playing right guard. We knew who was playing center, and that's for another video. But with the constant changing at the line, there was no real consistency. And it obviously affected him, because you could also tell he wasn't able to trust his line. And unfortunately, if you're scared of getting hit after 2 seconds because your line doesn't seem to be able to hold the defense, your eyes are going to come down because you're not trying to get hit. So overall, Aaron Rodgers did get a lot of flack. And it makes sense. He is a highly paid quarterback. Like, he was getting compensated to do better than this, even with such a raw group at the receiving crew. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of factors that I think contributed to his poor play. Obviously, his missed throws, some of it could have been on the thumb, some of it could have been on Aaron Rodgers. Kind of hard to tell till next season if he comes back, if it was truly him, or if that thumb really messed him up, and a lot more than he led on to believe. His offensive line group changing practically every week, couldn't get good pass protection, and pretty much Newman starting for way too long. Then his receiver group, of course, Christian Watson went out early in the training camp, so we couldn't get on the same report with him. Romeo Doubs started good, got injured. He went out. Al Lazard had some injury. He's not a true number one receiver. Randall Cobb's going in and out. Juwan Winfrey's subbing in. Samari Toure. So there were a lot of variables in the receiving group. So he had to try and get on the same page with them. And with the loss of time with the injuries, and also Aaron Rodgers just not practicing as much and going to training camp and getting on the same page, that is Aaron Rodgers' fault. That still played a part to where they just didn't gel well this season. But overall, in my opinion, I feel like he still gets, if you're going to go off a 10 rating, a 7 out of 10. He wasn't the main problem for our offense being so abysmal. He had a rough season. He had a lot of injuries to where it affected his play and different variables with the offense and receiving group. And also, he wasn't really supposed to be carrying us this season. Now, towards the tail end of the season, especially in that last game, completely his fault against the Lions, in where he was pretty much playing hero ball. We've seen it time and time again with Aaron Rodgers. When he gets frustrated enough, he'll just chuck it deep, hoping and praying. So that's on him. But overall, I still think he gets a 7 out of 10, and he wasn't the true reason for our offense being so abysmal. But let me know what you think down in the comments. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, go Pack Go.